It's so hard to make friends with Canadians. Canadians are distant. Canadians are very polite, but too private. Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever heard these words? And if you are a newcomer, chances are you have said them as well. My name is Bożena Felsz. I am a newcomer. I came to Canada from Poland. I have heard these words many times, but I have a different story to say. My story is about friendship. My story is about three friends, Mrs. Greg, Mrs. Norma Stedman, and Stasia. Mrs. Greg was a retired school teacher. My husband and I, we met her in Terrace, a small town north of British Columbia. We met her in 1982, soon after we arrived in Canada. We could not speak any English. But as the saying goes, when a student is ready, a teacher appears. Mrs. Greg was our first English teacher in Canada. And her living room was our first classroom. I have to tell you that Mrs. Greg lived in a very comfortable trailer with a bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, living room, and a storage room full of books, piles of Canadian Reader's Digest with real-life Canadian stories. We had lessons every weekday. Every weekday we started at 9 a.m. sharp with a cup of coffee, 2 or 3 cookies, and a small talk. Very important in Canada, small talk. And then we would go to Mrs. Greg's storage room to choose a reader with stories so powerful, many of which we still remember. For example, my husband still remembers this story about Canadian Mohawks working on the heights in New York. He was so impressed. And I still remember a story about a small community stranded in the wilderness of the Canadian Great North without food in winter, and Canadian rescuers hovering above them and dropping bags full of dry beans so they could cook them and survive this harsh winter. You see, we read the stories, we talked about them. This is how we started to learn about the life in Canada from Mrs. Greg. In exchange, we would help her in her garden with the plants, weeding, watering the plants. Once we even painted the fence. Mrs. Greg accepted generously our help as a token of appreciation for her generosity, kindness, and care. Her heart and house were always opened to us. And then we moved from Terrace to Vancouver, where we met Mrs. Norma Stedman. Or should I say, Norma. Please call me Norma. She would always correct us every time we called her Mrs. This is how we learned that Canadians prefer to be less formal. Norma was also a retired school teacher, and we met her through Mosaic, an organization helping newcomers to Canada. First, Norma would come to our apartment. She would sit in the middle of the sofa with a book on her laps. We would sit on her both sides, taking turns to read from the same reader, because Norma corrected our pronunciation. And then she would invite us to her place for lunch. Her specialty, Canadian soups, coleslaw salad, served with warm buns. Help yourself, have another bun. She would invite my husband to have some more food. Help yourself. This phrase I learned from Norma. Her heart and house were also always opened to us. And then we met Stasia, our Polish-Canadian friend, and her family adopted us. Every Christmas, every winter, we would spend with them Easter and Christmas, every Polish holiday. Stasia was also very good cook. Her specialty? Pierogi. Polish pierogi, with blueberries in the summer, cabbage and meat in winter, potato and cheese every season. You see, that's why we were like at home in her place. Even when they moved to Kelowna, we would still keep in touch with them. Their hearts and house were always open to us. Stasia was more than a friend. She was like a sister, a guardian angel, maybe. Today, our friends are no longer with us. They died, they have passed away, but they still live. They do live in our hearts, in our minds, in our stories. Sometimes I wonder, were we so exceptionally lucky to have met 3 wonderful friends in Canada? And I think that yes, we were lucky. But the good news is that there are many more Canadians who are generous, who are caring, whose hearts and houses are ready to welcome a newcomer. Indeed, one of the first words I learned in Canada was the word welcome.